right, well, we're live and we are on our way to our first really official session here of doing the live Krita 2D animation. So, welcome if you happen to drop in. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the chat, which is kind of just out of the corner of my eye, but I do want to include everybody because I really want everybody to get involved with this session and make their suggestions family friendly, of course. And just help me along. Let's enjoy this and come hang out and just have a good time. So while I'm doing this, I'm just going to finish letting everybody know that we're live, and we'll get to it. Bear with me just 2 seconds while we finish out this particular piece of things. And you know what? Why don't we just listen to some easy cinematic in the background? Usually keeps things light and dreamy. I had already thought through a bit about what I want to do today. We'll see how it comes out, because I honestly have no idea. But it could be fun, so let's give it a shot here. Just getting the last message out, and I promise we'll jump into things. If you happen to be here in the chat, don't hesitate to say hello. We'll be on it very shortly here. All right. That part is done. Let's get on over and get to the good stuff here. All right. So, kind of like what I was explaining last time, is this is Krita. It's a free open source tool. In case you haven't really had the chance to play with it very much, it's free and it's just so powerful in what it can do. One of the many functions it can do is actually 2D animation. Not too different from the kind of the core and the concept of the way they used to do things, except everything's done on the computer. It's not done by hand, it's not done on paper, it's all done with a digital drawing pad on the screen. We're going to do that today right in front of you, just so you can have that experience with me, and also you can throw in your suggestions about how you might like to shape things as we go. So these dimensions right now, if you can see them very well, this is actually 4K. I'm going to drop us down to a HD dimension, just because that's usually what I broadcast. That's what we're broadcasting at right now, and there's really no need for me to go 4K right now. I certainly could if there was a need to upscale, but I don't really feel that need right now. All right. So first line of business here is we need to get on to what we're going to try to do. I like to choose my tools here. I have a favorite paintbrush, which is this one over here. Just always feels right for some reason. The pressure that works really well within Krita. That's another good function of Krita, is that it reacts very well. It's very friendly to drawing tablets, and it recognizes the pressure sensitivity very much. So that is a good thing that we're going to try to do here. Now, I'm thinking this through in my head, where to begin. And I guess what I ought to do here is just hop over to the animation workspace. That's always a good place to begin here. And just start us off with a blank frame. And let's see, I could have started out there just on the regular drawing canvas. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I'll just kind of get us into the right zone here of things. All right. So this is not going to be aiming for super realistic, by the way. This is really just kind of fun. It's going to be a little cartoony. But it's just something that we can kind of do. That we could put together. So I guess I should reveal kind of my thoughts on what I'm trying to do here, because that would help if you want to make suggestions. I'm kind of dreaming up somebody who's, this is an attempt, very ambitious, somebody who's going to try to draw a weapon and shoot, kind of like a blaster. This is sci-fi. We're in that kind of zone right now. And take a shot and then just follow the blast forward. We'll see how far we get. We've only got so much time today, but we'll see how far we can get with this idea and see if it actually works doing as kind of an animation idea. And we'll see. So that was my thinking. Throw out your ideas if you want to kind of twist and help shape along the way. And let's see what we can get here. So I'm going to turn on the onion skinning feature, which is really, really nice. Hello, Tom. Thanks for dropping in. Good to see somebody being brave. And let's continue forward here. So Tom, I'm not sure how long you've been joining up with us, but yep, feel free to throw out a family-friendly suggestion if you'd like to contribute to what we're making here. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the comment. There's a mention of some previous work with Kdenlive and Krita, which I do a lot of work with, so I'm very glad that was helpful, Tom. We'll continue to make more of those as we go forward. Or at least such is the notion. Alright, so this kind of becomes the tricky part, and sometimes what might be better to do is jump forward a couple of frames and then actually come back in and fill in the gap. Sometimes that's a little simpler if I can't see the steps or progression. So we're going to give us a couple of frames advanced here. I've already got a blank, oh, didn't make one. Let's make a blank frame there. And let's work on that. Because ultimately what we want to do is we want to pull back a good bit more. And just kind of keep adding to the scene here. See if we can cook us up some more things to listen to here. These are short. Kind of wish it was longer, but such it is. And I still quite don't like. I'm using a service that comes included. These are supposed to be cinematic songs, and it just doesn't carry that grandiose epic feel that I think it should for cinematic, but this is what it is. So thus far we have kind of the two-step of motion. Let's hop forward a few more frames. Let's make a new one. Now the way I have this set up is that it only shows me so much with the onion skinning, by the way, in case you're curious to try some of this yourself. In the lower right hand corner here, you can add or take away the range of pictures you want to see. You could go several images deep in either direction. It just gets too messy for what I'm doing most of the time, but that's an option just so you can know about it. Also, you have colors. You can change those. Red is going backwards, green is going forwards in case you're working ahead of yourself. So you can get a good sense of where the layers are as you work on them. When you save these things, what happens is that it saves it as a KRA, just like any other Krita document, but it will maintain the timeline in the metadata of that thing. So it's almost like you have a big working project inside of the Krita document that way. You save it exactly the same way. Yeah, this is a little better. All right. A little smaller than that. See my dimensions and a little bit of fixing here, just working on that. And for this particular case, I don't really know that it's important to see the character's face at all. It's actually kind of fun if we don't. So we'll just kind of work on that. I'm going to drop down the frames just so I don't have infinity to cycle through. Usually about 15 frames or so, yeah, sometimes 20 is about the range that I work on, and that'll take anywhere from about 30 to 60 minutes to fill in effectively. Just in case you're wondering how long this kind of takes. And true to my nature, I have not saved my work yet, so I'm going to do that. For some reason, I don't know, I live very dangerously that way. That's probably not good. Okay, nice and easy. Let's see. Yeah, it can be done, Tom, with kind of that anime look. That's the thing where it kind of you have to take the time to do the handiwork by hand. What can be useful for things like that, because the motion tends to be a little more fluid like that, is I would actually suggest using the mesh tool, which I can kind of briefly show you. That's really good to take objects and rather than redraw them, if it's going to be moving within the same plane or kind of following a repetitive motion, you can either create the frames and duplicate them to an extent, or using that tool which is under transform. I did a video on this, by the way. You have your options. Just see if I can expose this a bit more here. This is not the right tool here. That's select. We want this one, transform. And it's this last one here where you can draw out columns and rows, and you can do sometimes smoother animation that way, which can help significantly if you're trying to do like the fluid or the fluid but rapid movements that often come with anime. That could be a good way to do that, working in the same frame. So give that a shot if you haven't already. Sometimes I use that too, just to kind of help manipulate it. It's a little bit more tedious because you're not drawing, you're doing grid manipulation, but it can help because you're changing the same object versus redrawing it, if that makes sense. Think about my hand. Okay, great. Yep, let me know if you have any questions, Tom. I'm trying to visualize my hand here. Here we go. Because I have to think upside down and backwards here. Yeah, I like the way that's coming out there. Let's try that again. Alright, a few more frames ahead. Which actually probably going to speed this up because the motion's going to get very rapid. So let's make that a lesser hop. Oh, and also, there's no gun in that holster. Let's fix that. There we go. So the next motion really is just yeah, that's a complaint I have too, Tom, where the onion skinning does sometimes get in the way. About the best thing I could find to do about it was actually just to limit the directions on the lower right hand corner. You can just by tapping on these choices down here or tapping them off again, you can decide how much history you want to show in either direction, or you could just turn off the forward or backward altogether. That is about the most I could figure out to do so it doesn't get in the way. Otherwise, yeah, it gets so like a messy soup, I just can't figure out where I should be. It does help though, because I'm only working on one frame at a time now versus the previous 3. Let's see. I think I talked through some of that actually. It's there's a Workspaces option. Go look for the video, Tom, on making custom workspaces. It's out there somewhere. But you can actually drag and set up the Dockers as you like. Yep. And sure, it's actually fairly intuitive once you know where the things are, but it does help to tweak things on and get the Dockers, because not all of them come out of the box. It's I know what you mean. But yep, there's information out there in a video, and it's just a matter of when you have things dragged and placed, because as you drag things around, it kind of highlights and changes things, that you would come here and then save it as something so you could reuse it at a later time, and you can always jump to it or jump around to multiple ones. I have to do that too sometimes. So there you go. So once again, not really aiming so much for perfection here, just we're telling a story. And by the way, as it zips by, it gets harder to tell anyway. It's just the storytelling mechanism. All right, let's see where we're at here. Some of this seems a little bit jumpy because, again, we've only done so many frames, but you can kind of see the motion starting to take place. We'll make that smoother as we go. All right. So we're going to hop another 2 frames forward, put my onion skin back on. Okay. Now this, I'm actually not familiar with the G pen. Is that something that you're using in Krita, Tom, or where does that come into play? Take a quick look here. Oh, okay, I see here. Okay, I'll take a closer look at that one. Let me take a look. That's actually new for me. Yep. Interesting. Yeah, definitely take a look at that. I'll have a look and I'll have to let you know. Yeah, I guess any drawing instrument that's translating with pixelization into Krita, what I've often heard in those discussions is it might be coming back to a driver issue. So you may just want to check just to make sure that whatever is available, latest and greatest, for your board, give that a shot. Or if that's the one that's giving you trouble, you may want to back up a version. Sometimes, depending on the operating system you're using, it's a little more famous in the Linux distros, where sometimes when things move forward, they don't really move forward well. In that case, in the sense of Windows or Mac, that gets a little trickier, and it might just be a latest and greatest thing. So I'd say have a look at those. I have seen posts around Reddit and whatnot with those kinds of issues, and that always comes back to a driver recommendation from what I've seen. Hope that helps. Side movement on here. Sure, you're welcome. Should maybe we'll widen the stance a bit here. We're moving. So is he, whoever he is. Yep, I am using Linux, Tom. It's Ubuntu, actually. Jammy Jellyfish, I think, is what they named the latest one. That's where I am. Which one are you using? I got you. Okay. Yep. I've had very good success using the Linux side of things. It was an experiment I tried months ago. I was a definitive Windows user for many years. I won't tell you how old I am. But that was just what I knew and what I understood. And I just kind of got to a point where I really wanted to try something else and try something that gave me a little more flexibility. And I was very pleasantly surprised at how adaptable Ubuntu is. The Linux playing field, there's a lot of different flavors out there, but it really is very flexible. I know that was not always the case, but they've made a lot of progress, the development teams that work on that, and they've made it more friendly to the I should say the less tech savvy person coming in, just so it is more of a realistic option if they want to try it out. So yep. Yeah, interesting, because I thought I saw a distribution for a FFmpeg on Mac. That's interesting, but it is on Linux. Yep, I'm using actually here, and it comes packaged with Krita here with Kdenlive, And I got a separate version too because I like to use some of the extended command functions, which actually there's a video coming out in a couple days. So keep an eye out for that one. It walks through how to convert to GIFs with a transparent background. It's a little teaser ahead of time. I'm going to grow out the size of my work here. Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. Doesn't think much of Mac because in the end, I mean, Mac is kind of a version of Linux in a sense with a lot more, you know, user layers on top of it, but that's interesting. Oh, as a company, well, they do like to lock their things down. Suppose I can understand that somewhat. It's actually kind of sort of why I moved off of Apple as a phone and moved on to Droid. But in any case, I mean, it wasn't working out so well for me, and I like options. It is a real trick to keep up with this music player. Alright, next frame here. And this is probably going to be as far as we can get. I'll go back and start filling in some of the blanks just so we can get a better sense. Poor guy, I'm giving him kind of an odd figure here. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to get some muzzle flare action in there. Why not? Let's make it grand. I could be using the line tool for this, but oh well. I did mention this was going to be cartoony. It's an interesting idea. I can tell you that Mac equipment is generally more expensive. But it does have a good track record for durability. That is true. So theoretically that would work. It is very similar hardware. It's pretty much all the same at the end of the day. A lot of this stuff is written for you know, the common standards that have come out with the same CPUs and same types of GPUs and such. So the line is becoming very blurred as to what, you know, what distinguishes one piece of hardware from the other, really. Too fast. There we go. I'm going to fix my frame here because that one was up. And let's just piece in. I'm going to get a little closer here. One of the things that's worked out really good with this particular drawing tablet, it's a Huion model, by the way, is that when Jam and Jellyfish came out, the driver set that was released by Huion started to work the way you'd like. When I got it originally, it was working to the extent of it would recognize the device, but it wouldn't let you map a screen. I have two screens, so it was doing some funny stuff as to which screen it was drawn on, and also the shortcut buttons on the side of the tablet itself weren't working at all. But once we got into Jammy Jellyfish, that driver set actually started to work. So I was very, very pleased to see that that integration was successful, more so with the latest edition of that distribution. So I've gotten along really well with Huion in the past. Now, granted, I've been using them on Windows, but they seem to have good designs in mind when they make their stuff for drawing, and I've appreciated how well it generally works. All right, so I need kind of a, it's not going to come too far along, but yeah, trying to simulate something coming at us here, and that's always the tricky thing because the perspective I've chosen for myself here is difficult. I'm going to tack on some backwards frames here just so I can see. There we go. Just so I can get a picture of what I was doing there. Yep, I am using that tablet right now. This is the 610 V2, I think that is. And every now and then I'll grab one of the shortcuts on it. You can program them all, which is also another thing that's useful. In fact, I can show you here. You can load in the there's an applet that helps it talk to, in this case, to Linux, and this is also very similar for Windows too, by the way. It looks very similar. But you can program all the buttons, which is really super helpful. You can program the buttons on the pen. And this is what I was talking about before, where you can actually map which screen you're working on, which is really, really slick. You can map the whole surface, or if you want to lock it in like I am to one screen, you can also do that too very easily. Or there's even a custom space where if I'm going to be working predictably and I want the tablet to translate just to the size of where I'm working, I could do that, but that kind of gets in my way because you're constantly kind of zooming in and out, and I wouldn't recommend that one so much, but you can if you want to. All right, I'm going to back off some of the onion skins here, keep it localized. All right, and maybe just one more frame here. Let's push this out to 22. And in case I do see these others, so I'll just mention for everybody's benefit, I'm working at 30 frames a second. I keep jumping by it pretty fast. That is a pretty reasonable frame rate if you're going to try animation, by the way. It starts you off at 24, which is what is considered the baseline, you know, for 2D animation. 30 frames is about what you'll do if you're going to be working on everyday video projects. You want to park this in something. That's what I like to work at. You could do 60. You can really do whatever you want. 60 is where there's like high motion and you're integrating with lots of things that change very rapidly. I don't usually work that way. I suppose I could be if I'm doing these quick changes, but I like to work at 30 frames a second because it's just kind of a realistic way to work in this medium. So I'd suggest start out with 30 frames and you can adjust as you get a good feel for what you do. And as you can see, I'm adjusting the overall length as I go just to kind of keep this nice and easy. Okay, yep. 24 will work too. I like 24 because I often will bring these into a project that's already working on 30 frames a second, and it kind of gets a little funky if I mix frame rates between the two. So that's why I do that. But 24, that'll certainly work as long as it's locked into that as a project by itself. Absolutely. What I want to do is kind of tip this gun back a little bit now. Yeah, what I do actually is there's a kit that I had gotten actually with some of my earlier ones. It came with a cleaning kit to use that. You can use just like I would suggest using like a lint-free or a microfiber rag. That's actually what I use just in general. I have one that I got from my travels. I will just normally leave that on top of the device when I'm not using it, just so it doesn't collect a lot of dust, and that's actually done very well where it keeps the surface very clean. I also use that to clean it up when I'm wrapping up. It's a good question. Keep that. So I think this music service is supposed to be some kind of AI generated real-time thing. Some of these sound very similar, I'm noticing. A little too far there. Sometimes I've noticed that my zoom control gets confused between I had this drawing device and the mouse, and I used kind of the roller every now and then to get in and out, and sometimes it locks onto one and doesn't know what to do exactly. So you just witnessed it. Alright, so that actually looks pretty thorough. This is the bullet size. Alright, let's turn the onion skinning off and let's see what we look like here so far. Save my work. Always seems to be a thing. You know, I think we got a thing going on here. Something's weird's happening here. Let's go back over here. Huh. Must have started a frame and missed it along the way, so let's get rid of that. I thought I saw something strange. As can happen, that's why we check periodically here. Alright, let's check that out again. That's actually looking pretty cool. Alright, we'll go for a few more minutes here. We'll try to fill in some of these blanks that we left in the beginning. It's a little choppy because we're kind of jumping ahead through it just to kind of map out the motion. But from this point, it starts to get a little easier that we can kind of see the difference, and we try to fill in some of those differences of motion. So we need to get from here to there. So I'm going to start by cutting the difference in half. And we'll do that. Oops. Sometimes when I meant to hit undo, it hits the cut. That always takes me by surprise because I never expected to do that. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad it's looking good. It's always satisfying to see the motion come into play. Just double check to make sure that we're on target here. Okay. We could be. Yeah, I need to make that a little beefier. Alright. Back up a second here. I think that's a little better. More or less. Alright. Let's throw in another one here. Yeah, blur can be very powerful. I've gotten a lot into studying graphic novels because that's a really interesting kind of art, and blur is very effective for doing that, for giving intensity and motion, and even just communicating almost like an urgency in the moment. I like blur. Yeah, no, I've only ever used just kind of starting template. In fact, I use this just a general canvas. I just start with the HD dimensions and away I go. I draw a lot of these in mind with the purpose of integrating them into other projects I do. So I try to make sure that their aspect ratio and the frame rate will match up with something like that. I like to keep my options open. So here we're making kind of a rounded move. And probably we should start to see something of the hand there. And get closer. Now, what you could also do for some of these things, it gets a little bit annoying every now and then, but you could also be working on the stabilizer. I just did a video about this too. This can be really helpful if you're going to be doing like a lot of curvy type things and you want it to kind of help you self-correct and make it a little more smooth. It's a useful tool that way. I don't use it all the time because that little extra circle you see there, that's the error margin, or the delay as they call it, and it gets in my way sometimes. Just when I'm just trying to get the wrist moving the way I want it to. between. Yeah, sometimes I get a little bit of delay too while it's thinking through what I'm trying to do. But I like to use it, yeah, where there's going to be a lot of smooth curvature needed. And sometimes if you're doing something that's a pattern, or even for some parts of the body, it's just kind of nice because it needs a smooth curve, and it can kind of give you a little bit of confidence in a way while you're trying to move around a bend a certain way. It has its uses. Not quite the same thickness. There we go. Yeah, that's really the only way I know of how to do it, shadowing. Uh, and that's kind of where blur comes back into effect a little bit. It just kind of becomes a part of the inking and artistry process. I don't know of any computed way, or any augmented way to kind of account for a light or depth. Although, to be honest, I haven't checked through Gimmick lately. If you're familiar with Gimmick, that's a tool that comes packaged now under here, Gimmick QT. They've been doing some very creative things there, and they may have incorporated, I think at one point they had a drop shadow idea in there, which might get some of the way into that field. They were doing some kind of 3D translation the other day, which looked pretty wild. But anyways, that might be a venue to try out. All right. So I think what I'm going to do, let's see. That looks a little bit odd, but we're rounding around him too. Yeah, I'm going to fix that. Now, one thing I could be doing here too, just to share, is I could be breaking some of this drawing into different layers. That could be helpful, especially if I was going to start painting and inking color on top of this and doing that kind of stuff. In fact, I definitely would do that because I can still animate with that. I can animate per layer. I can even still do all the traditional grouping and subgrouping and work through that on the animation timeline. That becomes almost necessary because you're introducing so many different pieces that you may want to change as you go. So definitely work with layers as you start adding in more complexity. I'm doing one layer, one pass, just because this is just kind of fun and we're exploring the animation piece, but I would definitely recommend that if you take this much further. All right. So we're kind of coming in towards the top of the hour here. Let's see where we are. I'm going to just pull back a little bit here, make sure we can see everything, although it looks like I may have. There we go. Confused my frame a little bit there. That's okay. This is why it's good where we can come back and check and then fix those things. Not too much trouble. Okay, I think we got it. So right now I'm running at about 43% speed. That's kind of a good indication because, again, this is a little bit choppy. I've skipped every other frame. Ideally, I'd want to go back and fill those in, but you can kind of see how you can already get the sense of something's happening. And I love how you can just kind of dream your way through this and create. I'm also a big stickler for up close perspective. I like kind of the extremity of setting the foreground and the background, because it kind of gives you a quick sense of depth, but it also makes you feel like you're a part of it. Not that I'm pointing things and I don't want to shoot everybody. That's not the idea. But it becomes kind of a more immersive experience that way. And that's what I'm after, is just to kind of draw you into it and make it kind of feel like it's really happening, coming close to you. So I'll slow it down just a bit more. And then we'll try it at full-time speed. And then I think we'll call it a day for today's stream. Let's jump it up. It's gonna start looking a little less clean as we go, because again, not all the gaps are filled in. And as we start to approach 100%, we're a little under a second's worth of information right now. Under the 30 frame. All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me and joining in this experience. I hope it was worthwhile. I had a good time. It was fun to create, and I will share this drawing just so we can kind of watch and see how it came out along the way. But in any case, I wish you a pleasant day wherever you are in the world. I'm not quite sure, but I do wish you a fair day and a good time. And I hope to see you next Wednesday as well. I'll be back again on 2 p.m. Eastern, and we'll continue doing this. We'll continue creating, and don't hesitate to give some suggestions along the way, because I'd like you to be a part of this as much as I get to be a part of it too. I'm glad you're with me. So, Tom, thanks so much. Oh, and the Czech Republic. Okay, nice. Well, fair day to you out there. And to everyone else watching, thank you so much for spending your time in your afternoon or evening, as it were, or morning with me. I'll catch you next Wednesday. Thank you so much.